It is 5 o'clock somewhere, and you've tuned in to episode 14 of BRC. For those of you who'd like to watch this episode, it's available on our website, YouTube, and Spotify. Today in our Tales from the Still segment, I speak to Jessie Parker about Doc Swinson's whiskey. Then later in the show, I catch up with Chef Louise Leonard, who shares her recipe idea using Jessie's whiskey in today's World of Weezy. Stay with us.
There's nothing better than the smell of coffee in the morning. What if you could enjoy a coffee subscription of fresh, roasted specialty coffee while making a difference in the lives of the farmers that grow it? What if you also had access to a virtual coffee community of other coffee lovers and the coffee farmer and roaster? That's all part of the Farm to Cup Coffee Club subscription at Unleashed Coffee. Subscribe today. UnleashedCoffee.com.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everybody out there watching and listening. Today, we have Jessie Parker from Doc Swinson's Whiskey. And I am very interested to find out more about this whiskey and way more interested to find out about Jessie because Jessie has been doing this for about 10 years since he turned 21. And it's just amazing to me how far he's come in 10 years. And I'm very interested to hear your whiskey journey, Jessie. So please do tell us, when you were a wee little lad, did you always think you'd be working in whiskey? And where were you born? Where'd you grow up? How did you get from there to now doing head blender at Doc Swinson?
Certainly. No, thank you so much, Carrie, first of all, for having me on. This is wonderful. I'm super excited. My podcast career as a guest is now just barely blossoming. So bear with me. No, it's kind of funny. So I think the first question was, where do I come from? Did I think I was always going to be in whiskey, etc.? I don't know. It's funny. When I was 21, I took a little course in Seattle on distilling. It was at a craft distillery. There's only a handful of them or so in the state at the time. And the distiller there looked at me and said, well, what do you want to make? And I think I said gin or rum, something to that accord. He said, what do you mean? Your last name is Parker. You should definitely be in whiskey, if you can imagine why. Quite a history of Parkers in the bourbon world. I'm not related to any of them that I'm aware of, but here I am, just adjacent, blending whiskeys just like they are.
I don't know. You may have to check on Ancestry.
I know. It's actually true. I should do the 23andMe thing or something and figure that out. There's a good chance. I do have a lot of relatives from the Kentucky, Tennessee area if you go back about 100 or so years. So it's totally possible. Maybe a little bit of it went down in the bloodline.
It could be very well in your blood.
Absolutely. I think you inspired me. I'll have to do it at some point in time. I know there's an old family, like estate somewhere in Tennessee. I mean, it's so far removed, I'm sure it doesn't even exist anymore. But I have heard of that. Anyways, I was born on Whidbey Island in the Pacific Northwest, the Great Pacific Northwest in Puget Sound. We ate a lot of seafood growing up and learned how to swim at a really young age. And humorously enough, my parents weren't really into whiskey, so more rum, actually. My dad was really into rum, so I found an affinity for rum at a pretty young age. And my parents were a little more, I think, European in some regard. They were like, sure, try it, go for it, do whatever you want. Just don't drive and, don't make me pick you up at jail later.
Right.
But so Whidbey Island, Washington, I think it really helped scope where my palate has come from, actually.
So at 21, you were at a family-owned distillery. How did you get there, and what did that experience bring to the table for you?
Yeah, absolutely. So just to clarify, it wasn't my family that owned it, but I was actually going to school at Western Washington University for economics and communications. And I had fallen in love with distillation actually when I was a teenager to some regard. I was just fascinated by the processes. And it was mostly led on by beer and wine. And that was because although my parents never did it commercially, my mother in particular taught me a lot about brewing beer. And I know my dad was really into it when I was younger as well. So I used to help them, do all the hopping and mashing the grains and everything. So it was already kind of built in to some degree there. And I just loved the process and the smells and everything that surrounded it. And slowly I became more interested in making fruit liqueurs, actually, as a kid with my grandmother, because we had fruit trees, right?
Oh, that's adorable.
And so it was kind of what we did for the holidays when we give bottles out to the family and things like that. And of course, I was like a kid. I wanted things just chock full of sugar and we could put it on ice cream. That's what I fell in love with. And I started just picking up books when I was a teenager and just becoming virtually obsessed with distillation practices, and came across a lot of old manuscripts that were, uniquely translated mostly from French to English in the 1700s, and honestly just fell in love. So I was going to university, didn't think anything of distilled spirits other than maybe drinking them, if you can imagine. And it just so happened that the craft distilling boom started kind of taking off in the United States. And there was a couple distilleries opening up here in Whatcom County near the university. And one of them in particular was an apple orchard. And their goal was to make apple brandy and gin and vodka, of course, too, out of the excess. But I applied for a job. And I figured, what the heck? Why not? I'm going to university. I could use the money. This sounds really exciting. It's better than, just maybe waiting tables
Yeah.
To pay off my college tuition. And I showed up for this long, exhausting interview, and they didn't ask me a darn thing about distillation and what I even knew. It was kind of funny, actually.
Oh, that's weird.
It was super strange. And they bought these beautiful Vendome stills, big, beautiful copper stills, and really great ones for especially brandy production, in fact. And a couple days later, they called me back and they said, "Hey, you want a job?" And I said, "Sure. What the heck? Yeah." And they're like, "Okay, well, you're just gonna help whoever we hire to really run this. Assuming they'd hire somebody that had a lot of experience or some experience, right? Maybe even a brewer or something at the very least." And They just didn't. They hired me.
But they told you they were going to hire somebody, or they just
they alluded to it. Okay. I think they mostly just gave me the idea that I'd have some help on this regard. And really what happened is the owner of the place, who didn't have any particular knowledge in distilling or brewing or anything like that, but, he's a farmer and or an orchardist, and, they're pretty good at MacGyvering things together and making stuff happen on their own accord. So him and I kind of just hit the ground running. He showed me the basics of how to use this, steam-powered behemoth, and we made brandy.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Did you think it was kind of odd that they were hiring what were you, 20, 21 at the time?
I was 21. I had just turned 21, in fact. Maybe I was a month or two
legal.
into it.
You can come work here.
I think they were like, they're farmers, right? They're like, this guy's going to be the cheapest guy we could find. And he's only working like 4 days a week. He'll work his butt off. And I did. And that's kind of where that started. And I was there for 3 years. And by the time I think I just maybe turned 22, or maybe I was still 21 at the time, but developed a gin that won. It tied technically for first place at New York International Spirits Competition.
That's awesome.
Which was pretty cool. It was a pretty big one at the time. I think it's still a pretty decent, good competition these days. So that was like a proud moment. It was myself and this one other gin, and I even beat Hendrix, which was all the rage at the time.
Wow. Yeah, that was all the rage back then.
So there started my career, brandies and gin, and I essentially have almost never looked back. And how I got involved in Doc Swinson's was it was 24, 25, and this one gentleman came into the distillery. I ran the tasting room at the other distillery, and so I meet tons of people within a day, sometimes upwards of 200 plus people in a day. And he obviously asked some questions. I must have had an impression of myself because he evidently sent somebody else at some point in time to come hang out with me once in a while, just to check in, see what I was up to. And one day a
subtle recruitment.
It was like 2 years in the making or something like that. And one day I was out with this friend. We were having a drink, and he's like, "All right, the elusive gentleman who is interested in running or opening a blending house, a distillery with you, wants to meet you again." I was like, "Okay, fine, bring him on." He walks in the door and says, "This is what I want to do. Would you like to join us?" I really haven't looked back. That's been almost 7 years.
7 years.
That was
okay.
So
and was his
2000.
Name Doc
Sorry, it's
Swinson?
2015. No, not at all. We're a company of strange elusivities. No, his name's not. It's Bob.
Bob's not as exciting.
No, a little more straightforward. Doc Swinson's actually came a little bit later. Our company was really set up to do private label production for like liquor store chains and grocery store chains, developing products for them, which I thought would be an interesting change in my career. I mean, distilling's fun and it's exciting, but it can also be kind of like watching paint dry once you have your bases down.
Yeah.
And I really fell in love with the idea of blending. And it was because I had a few loose mentors. The cool thing about being 21, 22 at the time when the craft industry was just starting to really take off is there was some people that came from really big distilleries that you got to once in a while go to conferences or hang out with them from time to time. I mean, these conferences only had like 100 people and I was one of them. And nobody's threatened by a 21-year-old. You know what I mean?
So hey, what's this kid doing here?
Sitting there. I know, right? You're sitting there with all these like industry giants. These are like master distillers and blenders of big corporations, and they kind of just like kick it with you and have a beer. They're all wonderful, and they, to some degree, I don't know, took me under their wing in some sort of ways, whether it was just for like an evening or a couple days or multiple phone calls. I fell in love with the idea of blending other people's products because they already know so much about distillation, so much they can contribute to their particular distillation, and then I get to take multiple and then blend them together. And that's what I really wanted to do, right? I think that was the part of me that wanted to be satisfied by. I once wanted to be a chef, and so compiling different flavor profiles and seeing people's reactions and bringing back memories is probably one of the most impactful things I've on my life, and I want to be able to share that with other people. So
awesome.
Doc Swinson came out of that eventually.
What was the first? Now at Swinson's, do you guys distill it and then you blend it, or you source and then you blend, or both?
So we're all in sourcing. So everything we do is sourced. We work with primarily, the largest distilleries. Most people are very familiar with Kentucky, Tennessee, and of course MGP in Indiana, which is where the bulk of our product comes from. And we contract certain mash bills, actually a number of different mash bills. In fact, the ones we're going to taste today are all from MGP currently. Okay. But there's 4 mash bills involved in these products, each one with a minimum of 2. Okay. And they're all aged at least 5 years, some even more, upwards of 7+ in the blend. Wow. And yeah, my goal is to really put my own mark on the product here. So you're not just getting what you would normally find out of just MGP, for example. So everything's been manipulated somehow here, whether it's been in a finishing cask or it's a blend of multiple mash bills.
Nice. Now, when you blend the multiple mash bills, do you give them the recipe and say, blend these before you send it, or do you have them send it to you and then you blend it?
Yeah, it's a great question. So we buy the barrels, whether they're new or already quite a few years old, because we're pretty young, so we've already purchased most of them. We wait until they're about 5, and then we bring the barrels here physically, and then we blend them all in house. So nobody else gets to do the blending except for me and my team.
Good.
So it's all done in-house. All the finishing is done in-house. I source the barrels personally, whether it's with a broker overseas or sometimes directly with the previous owner's barrels as well. It is as often as possible. Sometimes it's not possible though. So that is really truly hands-on.
Yeah. And then do you also have them make specific mash bills from the start just for you?
That's something that we're considering and have considered for a couple of years now. And we're just finally getting to the point where we could justify the volume requirements, the MOQs that they need. We're hoping that'll stay because we've been really considering doing some of our own mash bills. So that's even more unique to us. But that is the reason why we started blending the mash bills is primarily because it's still unique to us to some degree, right?
Right. Yeah, mm-hmm. I love that. I love the idea of sourcing something and then changing it completely into something your very own. They do that Absolutely. Over at Barrel Craft Spirits with Joe, and I think what he's doing over there is fantastic. So when I heard about you guys, I was like, wait, is he doing what Joe's doing? Because I gotta talk to this guy.
Basically, we're just a very baby version.
Yeah, no, he was a baby version in a minute, and then all of a sudden, not such a baby anymore. So.
No, it kind of happens quickly. I think Doc Swinson's I've been playing around with the brand. Doc Swinson's been around for about 4.5 years or so. Yeah, 2017 is when it came to fruition, and we were only blending, 12 to 40 barrels a year, and that was it, and finishing them here. So it was incredibly small. The extra fun side of our company that we got to experiment with on our own, and nobody else got to say in it except for us here. As I collected all these notes on all these different finishing casks and different whiskeys that I got to work with, and it was, whether, once again, Kentucky, Indiana, and Tennessee. So I got to work with a bunch of different juice, which was great. And then, of course, to find something that's a little bit more consistent for our core line is all MGP for now. We'd like to keep that, but it'd be nice to add some others in.
So tell me how you guys came up with the Doc Swinson's name, and what does it mean, and I'm sure it's got some sort of history.
It does. So Doc, so it's a little bit funny here. As it would be really easy if we just said Doc Swinson was this person, and Doc Swinson was a human at some point in time. It's actually the turn of the century of Seattle. He's kind of one of the founders of Seattle, and the one who really lobbied to get Chief Sealth's name, even though they kind of messed that up a little bit as the city name turned it into Seattle. And he was kind of he was a bit of a rebel. He was like a classic doctor of the era. So, a lot of whiskey flew around him. And then, if I remember correctly, he was
little tinctures probably was running around.
Yeah, stuff like that. And if I remember correctly, he was involved in, some illicit spirits and stuff like that. So he was out there. He was a little bit of a rebel. I feel like his name
would be something that one of those guys like on, what's a good example? Pete's Dragon, where they have the guys with the cart and they come into town and say,
yes,
have this tincture, it's gonna be great.
This one. Yes, this will grow your hair back. Yeah, stuff like that. I mean, I don't know. He actually turns out he was actually a pretty good dude. And it's actually Doc Swinson's was his nickname. And we thought it was a good representation of who we were. We're a little bit harebrained and oddballs here at this company. I mean, after all, we're blending whiskey in the Northwest, pretty darn far away from the epicenter of American whiskey. We're very much like Scotland up here, as far as our weather goes. We're right by the sea. We're right on the Canadian border. There's really no true background in American bourbon or rye here. But hey, this is where we wanted to be. So it has our own influences on it. And we love living here.
And what city are you guys in currently up there? So
our warehouses and everything are a place called Ferndale, but most people don't even know about that. It's mostly petrol processing, and just to the east of us is Mount Baker. So if you're into snow sports at all, it's a great place for mountain biking. But Bellingham, most people know about. Okay. It's kind of like a little version of Portland. Actually, it's a little bit odd, a little bit funky, kind of stuck in an odd era. But it's a college town, and it has been for a long, long time.
Okay. And how long have you been in that town?
Since I turned 18, so we're looking at 13 years now. So I didn't go too far from home, all because of love, I will say.
Well, there you go. Well, I don't know. I think I'm ready to try some of these bad boys.
Great.
Would you say the rye was going to be first?
Yeah, let's try the rye first. When we kind of started making some of these, that's the correct one. Absolutely.
Let's show that to everybody. We got it.
Oh, you have an old school rye. That's beautiful.
Do I?
I don't see those ones as often. Yeah, this was our. It doesn't look really different on camera, to be totally honest. Yeah, so that was the very beginning of the concept of doing a Solera. So what we did is we took two rye mash bills. MGP's 51%, so it's got a really high corn content to it, so it's a little bit more adjacent to bourbon. And then MGP's famed 95%, which is what most people use when they talk about blending with ryes. So really heavy, spicy characteristics. And we blended those together, and then we put them in there's the smile.
If you pay attention to the show, both Chef Louise and I are both big rye fans for American whiskey.
Oh, no way. That's great.
Yeah, so we're in good company.
I'm in good company. Ryes are some of my favorites. They're actually the whiskeys that really got me into this.
I know they're a nightmare to distill, so I think I have an extra little teeny appreciation just because I know it's so hard to make it.
Yeah, for people who do it, oh my gosh, yeah, it's like working with bubblegum, hot bubblegum. It's difficult. I've done it a couple times. I'm like, whoo.
It's got a nice spice, but it's also very smooth. Mm-hmm. And the legs on this, I don't know if y'all can see that, but they're beautiful. And I do taste the corn. But I think it's a very good mix of corn and rye. I think sometimes it's not done as well, and it tastes more like bourbon, just hot bourbon.
Yeah, and it could be a little
not
bit.
This. So I'm very impressed.
Well, cheers, thank you. And like I said, that's an earlier one too. I got to get you a newer version as well. There's a few more rums in the new version. Mm-hmm.
Okay, this is release number 3, barrel number 5, bottle number 216 of 720.
Yeah,
so that's
you should actually, because there was a obviously quite limited quantity there. The newer versions are all run out of 164 barrel Solera, so it's the one that you have was probably like 20 barrels, to be honest.
Wow.
So that was incredibly rare. That was the very early stage of it. we actually blend our own rums in house. So what inspired this was there wasn't a lot of rum finished rye in the market, right? There's the classic Angel's Envy, which is absolutely like it's Christmas spices, right? It's like sweet, it's Christmassy, it's nutmeg, it's clove, and then we wanted to go a little different direction. I blended a few rums for some other clients in the past, and we always had excess stocks of rums from different countries, and I would just continually age them here. So I just had these barrels of excess rum, and I started blending these together and then putting them in our bourbon cask, the ones that we use to make triple cask, and Blender's Cut, the next two products we're going to try. And I was aging those rums as a blend for some period of time in there, and then I would dump that out and then put the rye in those. And that's actually where we make our own Solera. And like I said, there's about 164 barrels in it currently. 6 barrels high. It's quite massive, and it's a pain to work with.
Oh, I'm sure.
Because you were only taking about 10%, 15% out of each cask, cascading it down 6 barrels or so, and then pulling, about 15 to 17% out of every single barrel in the bottom of the pyramid. And that's what actually gets bottled. So it's this huge fractional blending system.
What I like about this too is that the rum doesn't hit you in the face. It's very subtle. And it's sweet, but it's not overly sweet. And I feel like the sweetness of the rum cuts the sharpness of the rye, and it's just very, very well blended.
Well, thank you. No, and it's kind of funny. Doc Swinson, that was kind of a direction we wanted to take Docs as a whole. Was when I've been tasting all these different finishing casks over the years. Now a lot of them are absolutely wonderful, but I always thought a lot of them kind of consumed the whiskey too much. So you'd really just taste mostly the finishing. And although I get it, you could really identify it really quickly. Like, I know this bourbon's finished in a port cask or whatnot, which is great. It makes it really simple for the taster. And we decided to do everything way more difficult here and use the finishing casks more like you would in Scotch or Irish whiskey production, where it actually just nuances or complements the whiskey, but you still taste primarily whiskey. That was the direction that I really wanted to take Doc Swinson's, and I think we've done a pretty good job of achieving that.
I think you have.
I've gotten some. Thank you. Yeah. After all, it's straight bourbon. Straight bourbon or straight rye is the first thing on the label. I would hope you taste that, and that's what we wanted to shoot for. I know. I'm like, sherry's a little cheaper than a bottle of finished sherry. If it only tastes like sherry, you just get the sherry.
Right?
That's just a personal preference. So,
or should we move on to the bourbon?
Certainly.
Oh, that's got a lovely scent. That's a really good nose.
So Blender's Cut, which jokingly was going to be called Parker's Cut, but we figured there might be some lawsuit issues.
Oh, that's too bad. Well, if you put Jesse Parker's Cut.
There we go. Yeah, sure. Differentiate myself enough. Yeah. That's a good way.
Jesse's Cut. Possible. You should do Jesse's Cut. Jesse's girl. No, I'm sorry.
Oh my gosh.
Jesse's
I knew you were going to do it too. I thought we were leading right into it. Oh, okay. That was amazing. There's actually an Instagrammer that he's quite funny. He actually sang an entire song to that beat about this whiskey.
Oh, I love it.
Jesse's Cut. It was quite humorous, so I'd highly recommend checking that at some point in time.
It's a very delicious bourbon.
You like it?
It's a little... Okay, which one do I have? I have
This should be...
5-year.
Yep.
And it's release number 20 through 001.
We're
bottle
drinking
number...
the exact same bottle.
Are we?
Yep.
I have bottle number 5675.
Mine is 6689, but it's the same release, so same tank, which is great. So we're tasting the same result here of a blend of set of barrels. And Blender's Cut's kind of fascinating because actually each one of the products I produce has a different kind of processing method behind it. And that was to exercise basically the dreams I've had in a book forever is how do I want to process these different whiskeys from all these different techniques that I've learned. Once again, pulled from Scotch, Irish whiskey, cognac. A lot of influences I have are from cognac. I worked with a couple of cognac distillers over the years. And then, of course, the sherry industry. And Blender's Cut's unique in a way that it's 115 proof. And it's technically cask strength every single time. What we do is we blend the two different...
It is
not at all, does it?
No.
It's quite mild in comparison, but it packs a punch of flavor.
Right. Wow, no, I would not. It's not. I mean, it's got a little bit of heat, but not. I don't feel 115 heat. Wow.
No, we get that compliment actually quite a lot. The goal was to maximize flavor as much as possible. So in making Blender's Cut, we take two mash bills. The MGP is 36% rye and they're 21% rye, and specifically pick barrels based that have a huge range of alcohol content.
Before we go too much further, I just added 2 drops of water.
I did the exact
Definitely
same.
It opens up a kind of a floral note on the nose. Oh wow, that makes a huge difference. It makes it a little bit more spicy. Oh, it's delicious. Okay, so tell me more about this Blender's Cut.
Yeah, Blender's Cut is unique in the fact that, it's a blend of 36% rye whiskey, 36% rye bourbon and 21% rye bourbon, 2 classic MGP mash bills. So once again, it's got a lot of heavier elements from the rye in it, and it's blended always to 115 proof with minimal to almost no water added in the process. So it's this insanely labor intensive and complex method that I employed here to use all these different barrels at a huge variance of proofs. So you get all these different flavors that are produced at different, or that are pulled out of the barrel at different proof points. And we make sure that all of those can get into this batch. And then the end result is 115 proof or very, very close to it, where we only add maybe, a half a gallon of water just to make sure we're TTB compliant.
Right.
And what that does is it preserves the cask strength aspect and all the really bold flavors of the whiskey without essentially letting it, go into like extreme chaos and entropy. So
it's very good.
I think the thing we usually hear about this one is that it drinks way above a 5-year bourbon, closer to like a 7 to 9, 5? 7, 8, or 9. It is 5.
It's only, it is 5. Wow. No, you're right. 5. It drinks much. I was going to say at least 8 or 9 for sure.
Yep.
Like that. Yeah. Wow.
Oh, thank you. That's great. And that was the intention behind it was, okay, so there's, finding old whiskeys is nearly impossible anymore. So unless you have a stock of it, you're kind of out of luck. So how do we make the best thing out of the ingredients that we have? And 5's a really nice age in general, but if there's a way to elevate that even more and then give you a sticker price of a 5 or 6 year old under a, something that tastes like 8, 9 years old, why wouldn't we?
Yeah. Very cool. Okay, so now the one that I've been anticipating the most, because I'm a big sherry lover, is the straight bourbon whiskey finished in sherry and cognac casks. And it's got a purple label. I love that.
Hey, it's actually my favorite color, so that's why I went with it.
Yay.
That was a good cork sound.
It was. I may use that later.
Please.
There's a cork sound effect that I use on the show that actually was an organic cork pop from an episode.
Wait. Oh, that's incredible.
Yeah, it was like, I couldn't believe how good it was. So I was like, well, we're going to use that. I can smell the sherry in a very faint background and the cognac. It's got a nice sweet scent to it, but yet still smells like whiskey. That's delicious.
Thank you. I think
Bravo, sir.
Goals achieved on this one. This one took me a few months to develop. I mean, after even just the initial finishing process, sitting in my blending lab, I'm going back and forth with every single cask I had. I've got a couple dozen of each of these, and it was pretty labor intensive, and I'm sure my liver doesn't thank me for it, but that's okay. It was well worth it. So triple cask is pretty cool. I know there's another one or so on the market that does this, where they use sherry casks and cognac casks. They're just all really great natural complements for each other. The cognac really brings longevity and a nice background sweetness in it. And then there's 2 different kinds of sherries in here. We use both Oloroso and Pedro Jimenez, so kind of opposite sides of the spectrum here.
Yeah.
Yeah, the very first finished cask I ever did was a Oloroso, and I fell in love with it in a heartbeat. It just brings so much nice, like, citrusy, nutty characteristics to it that to the bourbon that you just don't find in a lot of other things. And the Pedro Jimenez adds some thickness, some proper thickness and body, and those really great fruit leather characteristics.
Yeah, the legs on this one is definitely thick, which is
and this one, all of these are, or this is a blend of the 36% and 21% rye bourbons as well. So essentially, it's the next step for Blender's Cut. If we don't bottle it as Blender's Cut, it ends up in 3 separate finishing casks And then each one of those casks age between 60 days and all the way up to, gosh, I've got a few upwards of 1 year and then a couple in the 2-year category as well.
Oh, wow.
So I pull from each one of these in order to compile my blends for each batch. So it's people always ask me, is it 45 days? Is it 60 days? Is it a year? I'm like, well, it's actually a range. It's 60 to 2 years old. Of course, little amounts of the 2 year because I have such limited stocks, but
Right.
it makes the difference. And that's mostly technique that I'm working on that was adapted from the cognac industry, something called boisé, where they keep these really old cognacs, and some of them are over 100 years old, and they use portions of it to feed back to the younger cognac stock. So it gives it this beautiful flavor profile that you wouldn't get otherwise.
It's gorgeous. These are all fantastic, and I would have never guessed that they're also young and made by such a young gentleman.
Yeah, cheers to
the
that.
quality is just fantastic.
I feel like I have my parents to thank for that. They're all about the quality of things, like make it good, make it worth it.
Yeah. I'm assuming since they have a background of making spirits at home, that they are proud of you, and that you were a winner at 21 of your first spirits award.
I think they were most proud that I got a job.
That's always a good thing that parents want.
I don't ask for rent money, to be honest. No, they're absolutely proud. It's funny. All this silly little brewing and liqueur making as a kid turned into a career for me. I've been in for just 10 years at the very least. So I've got a lot more to learn, let me tell you. And that's probably the most exciting part for me.
So what is the 5-year plan for Docs, and what is the 10-year plan for you?
Oh, gosh. Wow. It's a great question. So 5-year plan for Docs, more whiskey, more available to more people so we could share the beautiful things that we make and put in a bottle. So being on shows like this, Gary, is amazing for our brand, of course. I mean, you know that. I think the bigger thing is making sure we have enough whiskey to allow like a nice steady growth. So right now, because there's kind of a shortage in barrels on the market or available on the market, especially if anything of age, it's making sure we temper our growth so that we don't grow too quickly and then deflate all of a sudden because we ran out of barrels. And I think we've done a pretty good job of securing the next several years worth of casks, all aging in the Midwest. Once again, they'll age there for about 5 years before being brought here. Which then they may age here longer, blended, etc. And it's really just to make sure we uphold our quality at the very least, of course. And then, of course, more excitingly than even that is continue experimenting and now starting to compile more finished blends, kind of like the triple cask. So that's probably the next 5 years or so of Docs. Expand distribution, get the product out there, and make and improve it. Honestly, I don't think there's a single batch I'm like, oh, these are really good, but I'm almost like, how can I do it different next time?
Right. Do you have any other flavors that you're going to put out on the market, or are you going to start doing anything like single malts or?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think first and foremost, over the next year, 2 years or so, is to just really focus on Doc's American whiskey. So primarily just stick to finishing, and also kind of disclosing more how I process these things. So for example, recently we released the Mind, Body, and Spirit collection, which is actually the individual parts to triple cask. So if you just want to try the bourbon and cognac, the bourbon and Oloroso, the bourbon and Pedro Jimenez, you can. Wow. They're just in limited quantities, and you could, I realized recently you can actually find them on our online store at docswhiskey.com. So if you really want to hunt them down, otherwise it's kind of hard because we only release them regionally and only maybe once or twice a year. Other than that, I've been spending a lot of time hunting down different kinds of casks from Europe, South America, and the Caribbean as well, to see what kind of magical concoctions we could come up with. And not all of them get released, let me tell you.
Like, nope, that one didn't work.
Yeah, no, I have a small collection of unique products. I'm like, I'm not sure what to do with that yet. We'll just leave it over here in this barrel. I think that being said, though, is we really stick behind like our moniker basically is bottled when ready, and it's on every single bottle. We really do truly stick behind that because, like I said, we don't release everything that I create. Every once in a while, you get one that's just like maybe not yet. No, let's just put this aside, which is good. I think that keeps our brand, respectable. high quality.
You don't want to put out anything that you wouldn't want to drink. So
No, exactly. And in the end, that's why we're here, right? I mean, money is great. Don't get me wrong. It helps keep it moving. But in the end, this is why we fell in love with this and started growing Doc Swinson's,
right.
Which has really only been in the market truly for about a year and a half.
I was going to say, I didn't hear much about you guys until recently.
Yeah.
And I do have one more question about your labels, like who designed this beautifulness, and who came up with that?
Me. I was always I thought I wanted to be like a graphic designer for a while there, and I took one course in college, and that was it. I was like, nah, this probably isn't for me. And of course, when we started this company, we were mostly doing private label stuff, so everybody had their own designers, and I just kind of messed around on Illustrator and Photoshop, and the Doc Swinson's label, the original one, which looks very different than this, was basically the first thing I ever really made outside of that class. And it is slowly developed into the label that's actually on the bottle, including the bottle. I mean, it has some of our own touches on it. The cork.
I was going to say, I love how the cork says Doc. Hold on, let me pull out the cork.
Doc, yeah.
It says Doc on the cork.
It's kind of funny. It shows through really nicely, it's kind of hard to see.
Not focusing. There we go. Now it's focused. Okay. There we go.
Nice. They're just all things that I think that are kind of funny. And the group here at Doc Swinson's, the people that support me, of course, that make all this really happen, are pretty okay with me messing around
nice.
With our brand. And yeah, it was about a year or so ago, or a year and a half ago, we released a 15-year Kentucky bourbon that was a blend of several barrels or several dozen, actually. And that's kind of what launched Doc into the stratosphere. All the Reddit people, the bourbon communities, et cetera, were really obsessed with finding these 15-year bourbons because there were virtually none on the market. That kind of launched Doc into the stratosphere. And we had to, of course, back it up with something next. And that's where actually triple cast became. And the Solera method rye. How do we get a 5-year-old bourbon or a 5-year-old rye whiskey to compete with a 15-year-old?
Great. Well, you did a good job.
Thank you.
Yes. Well, Jesse, thank you so very much for being on the show today. I learned a lot, and I tasted even a lot of really good stuff. Really appreciate you being here, and I'm excited to watch your company grow. And thanks for getting the memo and wearing the same color shirt and having the same kind of background as me today. That was fantastic.
This has been wonderful. I know. I think it is absolutely great. We said that, I was like, oh, you're totally right. We do look virtually the same here. Hair with the background shirts, even the hair with the microphone or the headphones.
Same color headphones. So yes, thank you so much. Thank you so much for being on the show, and we will check in with you in the future and see how things are going.
Oh, thanks so much, Karen. This has been such a pleasure. I appreciate it very much.
World of Weezy is up next. Stay with us.
I'm Jesse Parker, the master blender of Doc Swinson's whiskey, and I wanted to let you know that our exploratory cask line is out now and available online and in various stores around the country, and it's in super limited quantities, only a few hundred to a few thousand bottles per batch, so you should get some now.
Welcome to the World of Weezy segment here on Barrel Room Chronicles. We have Chef Louise Leonard here, and we're going to talk about Doc Swinson's whiskey. I had Jesse Parker on a little bit earlier, and we got to talk about his whiskey history and the fun things that he's doing with his whiskeys. And we gave you 3 expressions to try. And I'm going to guess that you picked the rye.
Oh, Carrie, you know me so well. Of course I picked the rye. I can't say no to a good rye whiskey. You know me.
I thought this rye was a really unique rye because I don't think I've had a rum cask finish with a rye before. Have you? I don't think I have, but it was really good.
Yeah, I was actually thinking about that myself, and I don't know that I have either. And I really, really enjoyed it. And especially so because today here in Los Angeles, it's hot. It's full-blown summer today. I've been out on my bike. I was at the gym. I was in my garden. I've been sweating all damn day, and I needed something refreshing. And I will tell you what I did is I made a cocktail with this rye whiskey, and it was delicious. It's the Algonquin cocktail. It's a classic from the Algonquin Hotel in New York City, where my favorite Dorothy Parker, part of the round table there back in the 20s. But this cocktail came about, they think maybe sometime in the 30s or 40s, and it couldn't be more simple. All it is rye whiskey, dry vermouth, and fresh pineapple juice. And I will tell you, the fresh pineapple is key. Do not use the stuff out of a can. It is not the same. You need the fresh stuff. It's the acidity in that pineapple. And especially with this rye, because of the rum cask, it is perfection. It was so enjoyable on a hot day. I recommend it thoroughly.
That sounds really good. I have not ever heard of that cocktail before, but Dorothy Parker, definitely have heard of Dorothy Parker. So if she was up in that place and they made this drink and you approve it, I think that should be my next drink.
Yes, 100%. You have to serve it up in a very beautiful coupe and read some Dorothy Parker quotes to your friends while doing so, and you're having yourself a fabulous evening.
Sounds good. Well, I may go get myself, I don't have any fresh pineapple juice, but I did see pineapple at the store. So I think when I run to the store later, I will grab a pineapple and try one of these bad boys.
Do you want a little hack to make some fresh pineapple juice at home if you do not have a juicer?
Sure.
Here is a hack for fresh pineapple juice at home if you do not have a juicer. Go to the supermarket, buy yourself a pineapple, cut it up, throw it in your blender and whiz it really well, like pulverize it. You might need to add a little bit of water, which is fine, but just pulverize the holy hell out of it and then strain it. You might need to strain it a couple times, but just strain it through a fine mesh strainer and extract as much of that pineapple pulp out of there as you can. And what's left is fresh juice. And you have that for your cocktails or your morning juice or, an afternoon treat.
That is awesome. I think I will try that. I do have a blender and I do have a mesh strainer. So there you go. And Louise, thank you so much for coming today for the World of Weezy segment. As always, we'll see you next time with our next drink.
Cheers.
If you like what you've seen on BRC, you'll love what's coming soon in the Barrel Room Parlor. As a member, you'll have exclusive access to various spin-off series, including The Cutting Room Floor and the Telly Award-winning series Kindred Spirits. To create your membership, visit www.barrelroomchronicles.com and click on Become a Member. Once you have chosen your membership level, you'll be able to enjoy all the extra content it has to offer. You'll even be able to participate with the show by commenting on videos and other posts. Don't wait. Sign up today for exclusive content in the Barrel Room Parlor.
That does it for today's show. To read notes on this episode or learn more about our guests, please visit barrelroomchronicles.com. If you like what you heard, please rate and subscribe to the podcast. If you really liked it and you want to show your support, buy us a whiskey through our Ko-fi site at ko-fi.com/BRC or become an exclusive member of the Barrel Room Parlor, where you'll get exclusive content not seen anywhere else. And finally, if you work in the whiskey or spirits industry or just have a deep passion for whiskey and want to share your spirits journey, register to be a guest through our website. Thanks for joining me. Until next time, Salanjava.
Barrel Room Chronicles is a production of First Reel Entertainment and is distributed by Anchor FM and is available on Spotify, Apple, Google, iHeartRadio, Amazon, or wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts.